Well, welcome to the Be the One podcast, the first installment of the 2024-2025 school year. And this is a slight change from the past. Typically, Avery is sitting in my seat, and that's a big change. We're going to miss her significantly. She was the driving force behind this entire enterprise. And we're going to miss her. Avery, we miss you, and I hope that I can do it justice. Excited to have Mr. Ed Martin joining us today for the very first installment. And Ed feels like he's been here as long as I have, but in fact, he joined us in January of 24. And my intention is to talk very little here, Ed. I want to give you the floor and give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself and how you arrived in this seat today. Ed, for those of you who don't know, is our assistant head for institutional advancement. And Ed, I'm going to let you share your Brookstone story, how you got here.
Well, thank you, Henry, first for having me, and I hope I will do it justice being your first guest. I did give you the opportunity to select somebody else if I wasn't top-notch, but I do appreciate it.
I have no doubt.
So the 7 months has been just fantastic for me and my family to get to know the Valley, the Brookstone community. It's so special. My family's background is, not far from here. I know Henry knows this story, but our audience may not. So my mother was born in Pine Valley, lived in Midland, and then grew up from age 3 on in Upson County in Thomaston. So a lot of my childhood memories are rooted not far from West Georgia. So when the opportunity presented itself to interview here, to help build a team and be a part of a new vision and a future capital campaign and Henry's new leadership, it was too much to pass up. It was just too good to be true, really, when I came here and met the families that were here and realized that my daughter would have an opportunity to go to this school and be here for many, many years and build special relationships. And that's really what brought us here. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind of a journey, but exciting. And to be able to connect with so many families so closely in the last 7 months, we are very appreciative.
Thank you for all that, Ed. Can you go back further and talk about the history of the work that you've done in your career and also maybe a little more color to the process that you went through here? Because from my seat, it was a really fortunate and fortunate process for us to find you. So if you maybe could take us back a little further on that journey.
Happy to. So I've been in youth-serving, nonprofit, fundraising, and leadership roles the last 27 years. I got into that work in 1997 after I got out of University of Florida. My background was in public relations, marketing. I had done an internship with the American Cancer Society, and I knew in my heart that I wanted to serve, and community service and youth in particular was near and dear to my heart. So I went down that path for 20-plus years in CEO and chief fundraising officer roles that took me from Florida to Texas, to Alabama, to North Carolina, and then back to Florida because it reached a point where I needed to be closer to family. And my family, born and raised in Florida, and they all retired there. Their health was a situation where I needed to be closer, and now I'm still only 4 hours away, which is very good, and their health has improved. I had an opportunity to get into education and raising funds for providing an exceptional education for children full time. So I took that leap from youth-serving nonprofit to independent schools 4 years ago, and a very, very strong independent school, in Jacksonville, Florida, called the Bowles School. 3 campuses, large student body. My daughter would have been class of 32 there, and I had no desire or inclination to leave. And then a search firm by the name of Carter Baldwin that works a lot with independent schools based in Atlanta and Washington, D.C., they literally reached out to me on LinkedIn. I had other offers before. In fundraising and advancement, you will get contacts because you meet a lot of special people. You work with a lot of wonderful people, get introduced, and opportunities are presented. And we had declined all up to that point. I said, no, we're good. My family's here. But there was something different about Brookstone. And my wife and I were a little skeptical at first because it was, I think, the 7th or 8th offer we had had in about 12 months. So I literally forwarded the website and information from the Carter Baldwin representative to my wife. I said, okay, poke holes in this. This is the latest one. We're good. And she said, actually, this looks pretty good. So I did a little more research, a little more information about the school, and then responded to the Carter Baldwin representative that I would be interested in learning more. And that began the journey of my candidacy for the assistant head role here in advancement at Brookstone. And then it was a process where I went through multiple interviews with Carter Baldwin, Zoom, very thorough, vetting, a lot of follow-up, wanted to know more and more about my background. And then I was notified that I was, I think, one of 4 or 5 finalists that were invited to interview her on campus. And then I came in for the weekend. And this part I remember very vividly because this was very strategic. When I was offered an opportunity to pick from a series of dates, I shared with my wife, I said, we want the weekend date because I want that community to know if this is the right fit for us, that we're going to spend the whole weekend together as a family. And I wanted that to get out because that mattered so much to us that this was going to be a family decision. So we came in on a Friday, spent the weekend. We were downtown on the river. And the school was so gracious in putting us in a hotel downtown that we just really enjoyed. We could walk everywhere. And the community just really appealed to us and all the development and the sense of philanthropy here. I had researched it and read about it, but I got to see it firsthand, how much individuals cared about a community effort and had come together over many, many years to build what we know in Columbus today. And I've learned that's been a transformation the last 10 to 15 years. And that was very impressive for somebody in philanthropy to know how generous this community was and how they looked at a community vision first above individual goals. And that was important. So my interview started Sunday night with Henry and a small group over dinner. And then the next day on a Monday, it was full from 8 to about 5. I felt very strong about it and was hoping that the connection was mutual. And then a couple of weeks later, I heard from Henry and he made the offer. And that's the whole story.
It's interesting. It's very similar to mine. Go back to, I didn't realize Sarah was so integral in your decision to even consider the job, your wife. Tell me, what was the difference between what the Brookstone job description and maybe some of the others you described or you considered?
Well, some of the other ones were bigger roles, and I had been in bigger corporate type roles before where there wasn't a sense of family. And my previous career, for 20 plus years, it wasn't uncommon for me to work 65, 70 hours a week, not to see my daughter for multiple days, for me to travel across country meeting donors and constituents. And I had one role on a national level where I would fly from state to state and train board members and instruct on best practices for. I was gone a lot. And it was really important. We have one child. We're blessed to have an amazing little girl. And she's daddy's girl. And more than that, in these ages, I needed to be present. And one of the things that was so attractive about working with an independent school is how supportive that community is and helping you raise your own child while you're raising funds for others. So knowing that this community was on one campus and that I wouldn't be traveling across country and that we would be known and loved here. I mean, the embrace that she got when we came up to homecoming, even before we started, when we were researching and we saw this community, and then when we came up as a family and my daughter shadowed a couple of days, it was just a separator. There's so many differentiators in Brookstone from other places we had been, and just the ability to be present and my daughter to be on the same campus and me not going from multiple campuses or being out of town or out of state.
Thank you. And your daughter Aubrey is really a great addition to our community. You shared a really heartwarming story about her at our faculty pre-planning event, and tell our audience a little bit about her and about her experience. I mean, that must have been challenging to join a school mid-year for her.
No, thank you, Henry. It was. This is Aubrey's 3rd school in 5 years. Because of my career. And that was, again, a big part of our decision. If we're going to be here, we're going to be here for the long haul for Aubrey. She's creative. She's insightful. She's precocious. But she's also introverted and quiet, like her parents are. And she comes out over time. And she has made a small group of friends that she's really bonded with. And we had a birthday party a few days ago. She just turned 11.
Fantastic.
So she's excited to find that connection and be here. It was a challenge coming in the middle of the year. And Javon and the team in the intermediate school campus, as I shared with faculty and staff, could not have been more warm and welcoming. They really, as so many of our families listening to this know, the way Brookstone loves your child and gets to know your child is unparalleled. I've just not seen anything like it. And again, working with youth organizations and other schools for going on 30 years now, I've just not seen anything like this. And they did that for my daughter. And there's no way I can pay that back with no amount of work and relationships and no amount of funds that we raise. When you see it happen for your child, that's a game changer. So she's excited beginning of this year, a little nervous, as I think all our children are, to start school. But she's running on cross country, which is a new venture for her.
That's awesome.
And our coaches there are fantastic. Jeff and Haley Champion, so encouraging, which my daughter responds very well to that. So we are optimistic about the new school year and her continuing to grow and develop under the guidance of the wonderful staff and faculty here at Brookstone.
That's great. Thank you, Ed. So you talked about, and I think shared really articulately about sort of what got you here. Tell the audience a little bit about sort of what might keep you here. What is it about the work? What is it about the place that's been meaningful to you?
No, that's a good question, Henry. I think it goes back to what I researched has come to fruition in reality, and that is the generosity of the Chattahoochee Valley. So I went through the litany of places with the staff that I've lived and work, and I think it's impressive for me in understanding how much local connections mean and knowing where I've come from to value those local connections. So, 5 different states, another country, and all that helped me see a different perspective. But this community is the most generous that I've ever worked and lived in. And there's just so much evidence of that. And I had read and researched that before the interview. But coming here, Henry, what got me most excited was the fact that we hadn't run a comprehensive capital campaign in many years, that there was great enthusiasm before behind the scenes. So I've been able to have more than 50 sit-down interviews with couples to find out, what are their thoughts on Brookstone? What are we doing really well? Where we need to improve? What would they like to see for the future? We really call that a discovery interview and a feasibility study in the world of advancement. So being able to do that and see how candid our folks in this community have been about what they want to be a part of. So the opportunity to raise significant dollars and really transform this campus and the educational experience for our students for generations to come, that really excites me. And I've just never seen a community as giving as this one.
Wow. This is a lot. I think, again, you and I have a very similar experience in that regard. Talk about your work, your current work, and a little bit about your goals for this year, and about sort of the work that we've done as a team, the executive leadership team, and how that has been, how that experience has been for you.
Well, being a part of a team as encompassing as our leadership team here has been eye-opening and a nice learning curve for me. It's a different role than I had at my previous independent school, and it's great to hear all the different voices around the table. And so, Henry, I appreciate you bringing that. And we've got everything from counseling to all the division heads, to enrollment, to communications. It's a learning center. Everything is represented, so we really can make the best decisions for the school. And for me, now that institutional advancement, that vision has grown to include our enrollment admissions office and communications and fund development, alumni engagement, to know that all the external facing divisions of the school fall under the institutional advancement house. And I get to be a part of building and developing that team with some great talent, and being able to hear from them and their voices. We've got some really talented folks. The addition of Taylor Green in communications is wonderful. She's doing great work early on, just like Connie did for so many years for us. Bennett and Bianca are great on that team. And then obviously in enrollment, you've got Meg Baker and Ann Parker and the great work that they're doing, and Meg Stewart, who for so long, too long, was a solo operator in advancement, and now being able to support her and the great work she does in alumni engagement, to give leadership to that team and know that we can really build on it and raise some funds and get some more people on the fund development side. To know that opportunity is there. A few of the what I call early wins for our team, and it really is a collective team effort. We've had some six-figure gifts come in for the endowment just the last couple of months.
Wow.
A six-figure gift for program support to expand leadership development program here at Brookstone. Early pledges for our annual fund campaign. Pyle and Kazad Shroff and their leadership here. I know many of our listeners know the Shroff family, how wonderful and giving they are. There are chairs for the 24-25 annual fund campaign that's kicking off right now. We've secured early commitments on that of more than $60,000 in pledges just from visiting with folks this summer and sharing the good news of Henry's first year, some of the growth and expansion on campus, some of the student successes. So it's been a really dynamic first 6-7 months. But laying the foundation to build something for the long term here and how engaged our families are. And they will give me wonderful feedback on what we're doing well and where we need to shift or adjust. And just to have those kind of trusting relationships is so important in raising funds long term.
It's fantastic. Well, speaking of long term, what is your vision ultimately for what your lane here at Brookstone? Your hopes and dreams.
Gosh, there are so many. I'm going to try and peel them down to what I would call the wildly important. One of my favorite business books is The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and that is focusing on the wildly important, not having 100 goals, but 3 or 4 that you can really laser focus on. So one is we need to build out the Institutional Advancement House on some fundraising officers. And I knew that coming in, and the board was very supportive, that we need to add 2 or 3 more people doing what I'm doing, cultivating relationships, getting to know people, making sure that their passions and desires align to significant gifts for the school. Right now, I'm blessed to be able to do that, but not spend as much time as I need to do. I'm pulled in a couple of different directions, which is understandable, and rebuilding a program, and we haven't had that here at Brookstone. So that's one. We needed a couple more people on our bench and coach them up, train them up that are mission focused like the rest of us. That's a key.
Ed likes sports, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. Great analogy.
Thank you. Another one is to make sure that we're sustainable long term. I take great pride in the places I've been before, our teams that grew their endowment. And during tough times, we more than just sustained, we grew. And that's what we want here. We have a good endowment for a school our size, a very good endowment. But the larger that endowment is, it opens up so many other possibilities. It frees up other dollars in the operating budget for day-to-day needs on campus. It can provide direct support for donor passion in either financial aid or for athletics or for the arts. So having endowment grow is another big priority. And then the campus master plan that you and I have talked about before. What are we looking at for ongoing security? What does the campus look like in the future? A new lower school renovation. What do we do to expand and enrich the learning center? All the things that we want to do. That needs to be a part of campus master plan. I'd like to be a part of helping orchestrate and lead that the next 5 to 10 years. None of this is going to happen right away. And you hear the cadence of my voice change. I get so excited about this. It's because I know that we're going to get this done. And this community, the love for Brookstone, people they've been waiting. I mean, they've been waiting for us to come and say, here, tell us what you think. This is where we're going. This is our vision. Where do you want to be in this plan? So those are just a few of the things I think that are real important and that I want to be a part of in the future.
That's awesome. Ed, you're probably maybe slightly atypical for a fundraiser. I think a lot of folks maybe stereotypically see people in your seat as maybe backslappers and folks like that. You're not very much in that vein. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what makes you so good at what you do without the stereotypical extroversion that comes along with a lot of people in your role have?
I appreciate that question. It is accurate. So one of the things the hiring committee asked me is, why should we hire you? We have a list of great candidates, and this is where it's not in my natural inclination to brag on myself. It's not. And that's why it was interesting that I was first up for you. And I said, okay, I'm going to prepare for this so I can do the answering rather than asking.
I have no doubt that you prepared thoroughly for this.
I'm so used to conducting the interview and not being on the other side as I discover information.
Right.
So what I shared that I think separates my candidacy in that case and ability as an advancement officer is kind of a hybrid brain. So I have a background in business and running small nonprofits with budgets very comparable and endowments comparable to Brookstone. So I understand the balance sheet, forecasting finances, being more than sustained day to day, but how you fiscal management and securing funds. I understand that very well. But I also have a relationship side that trumps all that, because people will give when they know that you care. So it starts with just getting in front of somebody, listening, then finding out, discovering what they're really interested in. There is an avenue for any number of giving opportunities here. Regardless of what your passion or affinity is, we have all those needs at Brookstone. But I think getting to know people and building trust and spending time. One of the jokes I like to tell is many of our donors, they have a top three. It's very common in philanthropy. Folks that are giving 6 and 7 figures have a top 3 in priorities. Often it'll be a university where their children or grandchildren go, and often their church. That is a very common top 3. Some of the philanthropists here in Columbus have a top 5. That's how giving they are. Well, one of my examples from my time at the Bowl School in Jacksonville, Florida, I had a top donor that Princeton, his alma mater, was in his top 3, and he let me know that often. And as that relationship evolved, Henry, he would bring our annual report or our magazine and lay it next to Princeton and says, "You guys are on par with them." And I said, "Yes, sir, JP, you're right. And Princeton's not in your living room, I am." That's the opportunity we have here. If we understand that this is about relationships first and making connections, I think the sky's the limit on what we can raise, because that's what people want to do. They want to connect with us and know that they're heard.
Yeah, wow, that's exciting. Thank you. All right, well, let's maybe change direction a little bit. I'd like to just sort of ask you some shorter answer questions, but things that may help our audience get to know you, Ed Martin, a little better. And so first, I think Avery, this was a question Avery used to answer or ask, and it's a tip of the hat to her, was about our core values, and maybe what is your most, the core value that's most meaningful to you that we have here at Brookstone?
As simple as it is, that's a hard one, because they're all meaningful. I think the one that I land on, Henry, is leadership, because to me it's the most encompassing, because it shares so many of those other core values, because true leadership is, character and caring and loyalty and honesty and wisdom and courage, because there are different elements of leadership. I mean, there's servant leadership, which we do so well here, again, unparalleled. There's exhibiting managerial courage when we make the decisions that are the hardest to make, that we know we have to make, that they're the right ones to make, and modeling that for our students, and our faculty do that very well. So I land on leadership because of so many other things that fall into that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know why I just thought of this before this question, but one of the most memorable answers you gave in your interview, and I forget exactly the question, but it was something along the lines of, what's something that we might not know about you, and I think you responded that you were really good at getting things off of high shelves. If you haven't met Ed, he's very tall. But anyway, so I say that as a sort of an aside. But Ed, what is your favorite place on this campus? And I know you like to walk, and I know you like to get out and about. So I imagine you've probably seen just about every square inch. So what would you say is your favorite place here at Brookstone?
And you're correct. I love to walk. So you'll see me on campus often doing that. I think people thought I was lost when I first started. I had to tell them this is intentional. I like to walk after I eat, and we have great lunches here, so I got to walk that off. Really hoping potato bars back this fall. So the quad. I love the landscape. I love the great work that our maintenance team does. It is at its peak. It is Seattle green. I love that. I just loved how precise in the bell tower, and the fact that if I want to walk, laps in that rectangle, it's all covered. So that would be my favorite place, and I get to see a lot of students flowing back and forth, which is the inspiration of why I do this, knowing that we can be a part of, changing their present and the future of generations. So the quad is an engagement area for me. It's just a confluence of so much coming and going. That's my favorite.
It's awesome. The story goes that maybe the covered aspect of it was maybe a last minute decision.
It was a good
and
one.
so grateful for that. It's huge for us when it rains. Okay, what's one thing about Brookstone that you think should never change?
I think at the core of our school community is one campus. I do not believe we should expand the number of campuses. We have the acreage, and we have some challenges here. I've learned that geographically speaking, for some of our engineering volunteers, so I know we have that. But we have grounds here that, again, are unparalleled throughout our community. And having one community from 3K through 12 is very special. That, to me, is at the heart of who we are, and that's one of our signature items. I think that needs to stay.
And that Bowles has 3 campuses?
Three campuses,
right?
and one is really pseudo 2 campuses that's shared between the lower school and the upper school, and beautiful facilities.
Right.
But one of the challenges with that size and scope is connecting. So when I talked about before, it's so important in the role of fundraising and relationship building is connectivity. The fact that we have one campus to build relationships with some of our families for 14 or 15 years, that is a huge home field advantage. Getting folks here is a game changer. And when they're looking at enrollment and when the ambassadors give tours, that's part of what sold me is this campus.
So I think the school that I came from went from having 2 campuses to 1, and the difference was incredibly important and tangible. So I validate what you say there. Thank you. You mentioned a book already, Ed. So maybe if this question maybe use a different book, but one that's had can you share a book that's had a huge impact in your life?
So I did think about this one in advance, Henry, because I know what a voracious reader you are. I knew this was coming. So I'm going to pull, for those that are Star Trek fans, the Kobayashi Maru. I'm going to change the rules and answer this in a different way. That's Captain Kirk from a long time ago, but it applies. So I would say in my life and stages, I would say there's one book collectively, but maybe in 3 components. So 3 different to answer your one. So thank you for the latitude. The first was the first chapter book I ever read, still on my shelf today, a commemorative edition. It's called I Am Third. It's the story of Gale Sayers, the football player, Hall of Famer for the Chicago Bears in the 60s. And more important than that, the relationship he had with Brian Piccolo and the dynamics there. I was between 9 and 10 when I got that as a gift. I did not love reading at the time. In fact, it was a labor. So that story spoke to my heart. And for folks listening, you may know that book is what really led to Brian's Song, which is probably, if not the greatest, among the greater television movies of all time, and that story and that history of relationships. So that was the first book that really spoke to me for years. Then as my faith grew as a later teen and early 20s, it was the Bible and the stories of the Bible, which I connect with, obviously still to this day in my faith. But that was pivotal as I was growing and developing and making mistakes and learning to have that faith structure. And then as a businessman in my 20s, my late 20s, I discovered Jim Collins. And this is, for me, one of my, one of the go-tos on my shelf that I've had multiple copies that I've given and it's worn out. It's a lot like 4 Disciplines of Execution, but even better for me, and that's good to great. And that's sustaining business. What decisions do corporations and organizations and schools make that allow them to move from good to great and sustain that? So good to great, that's the one in the business world for me.
That's a great one. I have I Am Third on my shelf too. Remind me who played Brian Piccolo in the television movie. It was a very famous actor.
That's James Caan.
James Caan, thank you, James Caan. Yes,
but that was a phenomenal movie and book.
So I did include this question, but you can't answer it the same way that I've already said. But what might we not know about you from reading your resume, besides the fact that you can grab things off of the top shelves of the cabinets?
Yeah, and one that's deeper than that. I'll give you a better one.
Okay.
So part of my journey and leading youth organizations was very hands-on, and that was to be a director for a summer camp in Mannheim, Germany in the summer in my late 20s. I don't know that the details are on the resume. And it was part of an organization based at the University of Northern Iowa called Camp Adventure International Youth Services, and they were looking for folks with experience working with youth. And because I had a lot of experience, they let me pick my destination. So I literally looked at the globe, wanted to go to Europe, and pick somewhere as central as I could be and Mannheim and Frankfurt, flying in there was very much on mark. So I worked with 200 young people that were Americans on an American Army base, and their parents were all deployed. So very tough assignment. I had 20 staff that had flown in from other colleges that were part of this program that I had never met until we arrived in Germany at the airport. And it was a little bit like the Peace Corps for us, the toughest job you'll ever love. And it was hard. I mean, Monday through Friday, working with kids that you didn't know and staff that you didn't know, and trying to connect and build relationships and deliver this great program experience, because mom and dad weren't there. And we had a handful of Army youth leaders that were there to support us, but pretty much us, a bunch of people in our 20s leading this program with kids that we just met.
Wow.
And that was meaningful, remembering some of those kids to this day. And then every weekend, that was a Monday through Friday job. And on the weekends, we were on the Eurail seeing the continent. So those are memories that I carry, close to 30 years or 25 years later, that not on my resume, but I learned a lot about working with people, building relationships, and keeping the main thing, which was our young people and what we do here, and developing the values and supporting them every day and loving them every day.
That's awesome. So what was your favorite European city?
Oh, Rome, by far.
Wow.
Yeah, we spent the long weekend of July 4th, Henry, in Rome, and I was literally waiting for Russell Crowe to come out of the dirt. It was so awesome. And my Latin teacher
Great
and all of
reference.
those stories and history from 3 years of high school Latin and the Colosseum and the aqueducts, and how amazed I was at their innovative structures centuries ago and the things that still work today, and the history of that nation and how welcoming all Europeans were to us. It was just fantastic.
What a great city. It's pretty cool. Agreed. Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. So what is, this is one that I will know how your humility may prevent you from really answering this fully, but what is the best praise you've ever received?
That I'm a good listener.
Any further? Anything more on that? Okay,
that's it.
That is high praise. That is high praise. Well, so how do you relax and how do you recharge? I mean, you had your first summer here, and I know you took some time, which was well deserved. And how do you what do you do to re-energize yourself?
I love fitness. I've got a home gym, and if I'm not rowing or biking or jogging or walking and playing games with my daughter, so I'm very active. That's how I both recharge and unwind at the end of a busy day. I just love exercise and fitness. It's a passion. As a family unit, my wife, daughter, and I love to travel and explore. That's something my parents instilled in us from a very young age. By the time I was out of high school, I'd been in 30 of the 50 states. So we just love to explore and travel, and it was, car top carrier and tents and go. So now we stay in cabins now because I have a promise to my wife and a commitment on showers and good beds and all that. So, but we do go to some nice.
You're a good husband.
I try. I'm a work in progress. But we love to explore. We're in the Smoky Mountains hiking, going to the national park this summer, and you guys heard the Niagara Falls story, so we've been there, and we just love to get out and travel and explore and see. And there's a lot locally. I mean, we've been to Pine Mountain and we've been to Auburn for the day and the waterfalls. So that was part of the appeal here, Henry, to be very honest, is if you're an outdoors person, this is kind of paradise in a lot of ways for hiking and climbing and seeing the water. So that's what we like to do, go out and travel.
That's great. I think you share that passion with a lot of folks here. It's without a doubt. So last question. Can you share a moment? And I know you haven't been here that long yet, so this may be harder, but I hope you can still do it. Can you share a moment since you've been here at Brookstone that made you feel particularly proud to be a part of this community?
Wow. Well, I already shared the homecoming reception that we got before we were even officially here, so I'm not going to go there. This one to me was even more meaningful. It was during my interview. It was the tour that I received from our ambassadors, 2 class of 24 superstars. I mean, Marjorie Bickerstaff and Charlie Halter. The way that Ann Parker introduced me to them and the first impression they made and how caring they were and asking me questions and walking me through this campus and the pride that they had. And they had different stories. I think Charlie had come in middle school. Marjorie may have been here a little bit longer. Charlie on the soccer team, Marjorie playing tennis. But they were just beaming with joy for the opportunity to spend time with me, one of, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 candidates. They could have toured any number of folks. But the way they poured into me and represented the very best of this campus, I never forgot that. At the end of my interview, I wrote each of them a note to thank them for their time. And I know this story, Henry, so I'm going to share this. So Charlie's father, Pace, is now on our board. And months later, after I was here, Charlie never mentioned this. He did tell his father. He said, well, since they picked Mr. Martin, I should get a cut. I mean, there should be a commission or something coming my way. And Charlie is an entrepreneurial spirit. If you heard his speech at graduation, he's a very sharp young man with a bright future at Georgia. They're with his brother now. But those 2 students, Marjorie and Charlie, the impact they made on me, that's who we are as Brookstone. And there are tons of students just like them. And that was the first impression they had.
That's a great story. And I'll just add, I mean, reflecting on the whole process we went through as a school to find you, and going back to your story about your weekend visit here, you were our first candidate, and I think sort of typically in the interview world that doesn't always bode well, and but when you left. The feeling was so strong here about how right you were for us that it was really difficult to make it through the rest of the interviews because you set the bar so high, and that was unusual, but it's a huge testament to the impact that you made out of the gate here and continue to make. And we're just so fortunate to have you here, and I'm so fortunate that you and actually it sounds like I need to be grateful to Sarah for giving a thumbs up to the job description. So we're grateful to have all of you all in our community and to be a part of this place, and the work that you're doing now and the work that I know you're going to continue to do is going to have huge impacts on the way this campus looks and feels, and ultimately the future sustainability of Brookstone School. So thank you, Ed. Thanks for everything you've done, and thanks for everything you're going to continue to do. And thanks so much for being a part of this interview and doing something that I know is outside of your comfort zone, which is talking about yourself.
No, thank you, Henry.
All righty. Thanks so much. Well, we'll look forward to the next installment of Be the One podcast. Thanks for joining us.